Really stunning presentations today. I'm so grateful to hear you all live and to be here. Thanks to the Poetry Center. As I sit down to write this, I find myself remembering a brunch that lingered into an afternoon long ago. It was at Simone and Etel's house in Sausalito. A dazzling day, the air vibrating and packed with light, the trees tall and gray-green, the dirt a shade of ochre. I have heard that the atmosphere in the Bay Area is unusually saturated with light due to the reflections of the ocean and the bay. It seemed that way on that afternoon. The other person invited was someone with whom I have never had a shred of friendship. But on that day, our proximity, strolling in the garden, talking together, sharing a meal, was an experience of total ease. No doubt it was the influence of Etel and Simone, as well as the sun and the dust and Etel's art on the wall and Simone's ceramics, and the food, the flavors, the olives, the bread. This was the house on the slopes of Mount Tamalpais, a special mountain to Etel. For our occasion, I reread my old copy of Journey to Mount Tamalpais, 1986. The passage on the first page brought back that day vividly. This morning, I took the card table and put it out on the deck under the pine trees. On a piece of paper, shadows fell. I tried to catch their contours, but they were slowly moving all the time. They made me think of sidewalks on which people pass vividly. And the big mountain sent a wild smell of crushed herbs and the air, making everything feel slightly off. Like a chorus, the warm breeze had come all the way from Athens and Baghdad to the bay by the Pacific route, its longest journey. It is the energy of these winds that I used when I came to these shores, obsessed, followed by my homemade furies, Erinyes, and such potent creatures. And I fell in love with the immense blue eye of the Pacific. I saw its red algae, its blood-colored cliffs, its pulsating breath. The ocean led me to the mountain. I recall Etel's voice, thoughtful and probing, taking our conversation to some unexpected question or outlook. Her perspective disoriented me because it was larger than mine, and this was clearly effortless for her. I understood Etel afterwards as a different sort of person, one who came from a historical time and cultural space that was more capacious and complex than I could imagine. Her sentences were a sort of condensation through which these larger realms were able to enter my immediate experience. This quality has been a consistent pleasure in her work, but it's not only a characteristic, it's also a mysterious invitation. Through it, I'm introduced to the relation of sentence to sky. I feel the tenderness of the sentence, reaching beyond its enclosure. I enter a substantial and gracious hall with the ceiling so distant it may be clouds. Here's another quote from Journey. Clouds come into the garden. They are lighter than the air. The wind blows while they float. A pink smoke sweeps the sky from the west to the east. It is the evening fire, the one which leaves no ashes. The sun is far and low, as if absent, but light is fringed with fire, and the mountain is of a new translucent gray. Tamalpais is there, pale and fused with the ocean, with the bay, with lakes and reservoirs. My right eye merges with colors, the other gets lost in infinity. When given the opportunity, I had to ask the question whether the ineffable spaciousness of Etel's writing and its ability to move without obstacle through dimensions of history, culture, and spiritual inquiry was influenced by the larger role of poets in the Arab world. I cannot think of a poet in English who has these qualities. I was told that Etel lived and worked so much in California writing in English and French that to place her in that context is incorrect. I searched for Etel's words on these matters. I found in an interview that she was part of a generation in Lebanon that was taught only in French at school and punished for speaking Arabic, while at home she spoke Turkish and Greek. So she never became fluent enough in Arabic to compose in it. She went on to speak about her family in the same interview. My father was Syrian from Damascus, but really he was from the Ottoman Empire. He was an Ottoman officer, a classmate of Ataturk. They went to the same military academy. I was the only child of his second marriage. By the time I was born, he was out of a job. At the age of 38, he was unemployed because the whole empire had collapsed. And my mother, she was a Greek from Smyrna, and Smyrna had also totally burned to the ground. So I never got to witness their good days. I grew up with people whose worlds, whose lives had been destroyed. So I understand devastation, I understand refugees, I understand defeat. I should not have been surprised. Of course, the ease and spaciousness in the work came through transformation of fundamental materials. I realized that I had done to Etel something that I find aggravating when others do it. That is, to assume that remarkable qualities, particularly in women, are given and inherent. There is a quote in a later book, Premonition, which I love. The mineral world is probably more capable of intelligence than we are, but how can anyone know? Pink granite shows splinters of light, which are its ecstasies. For me, these lines reference the mountain, specifically a lived and complex relation to an actual place, Mount Tamalpais. For years, I'm going, coming back, turning around the mountain, getting up in the middle of the night to make sure it is still there, staring at it, walking all over it, and dreaming. Somehow, what I perceived most is Tamalpais. I am making the mountain as people make a painting. Mount Tamalpais never held my reverence. I hiked and climbed mountains when I was young, and I reserved my reverence for mountains that could kill you. But in Etel's work, such attitudes are untied, extinguished, dissolved, to be replaced by another relation entirely. She said the mountain became a friend and even a poem around which she oriented herself. She never felt in exile because the mountain was there. A member of a community of artists, she painted it for years. The event of perception, of color, is also a movement into the shared space of recognition. Etel said that light as an object, as a phenomenon, is magnificent. I'm a child of minimalism and even brutalism. And the word sublime calls up the old religion. It makes me uncomfortable. But the experience gestured at by the word still exists, and it has contemporary shadows. Having ceased to be an object or even a quality, the sublime hangs about at the edge of things. Like the dead, it exercises influence. In Etel's work, it has vanished into the experience of color. It is clear, it is empty. My spirit is anguished by color. Color is the sign of the existence of life. I feel like believing, being in a state of pure belief of affirmation. I exist because I see colors. Sometimes at other moments, it is as if I didn't exist, when colors seem foreign, unreachable, impregnable, fortresses. But there is no possession of color, only the acceptance of its reality. My last experience with Etel was on the slopes of Mount Tamalpais. The crowd, a gathering of poets and artists to memorialize Etel, was stricken with grief and solemn. It may be foolish to admit it, but I felt her warm, even bemused presence. It was a certain quality of regard that hovered in the atmosphere, that we were there on Mount Tamalpais, holding her in our living memory, honoring her. Flowers and dust and mourning and delight, ashes and flowers tumbled down the slope. This is the last page of Journey. Tamalpais is the system of the balance. There is a meadow north of the county, burrowed into the hills and trees, totally turned towards the mountain. One day while I was walking with a friend, we both stopped and looked. Tamalpais was sliding. It was a big sail and it was going. The eucalyptus, which make a tall forest all around, were marching, faithful army of the county. Tamalpais had posted her guard and they were following her. We discovered that the trees were walking trees. We told each other, let's keep it a secret. People will be scared if we tell them what we know. Each woman is a mountain. I remember those barren hills, ochre, yellow, amber-like, dry and crissing under the feet, quivering on warm nights, shrieking pain in summers of sun-like violence. I remember orange-colored mountains worshipped silently by dissident tribes. I remember plateaus fornicating with wind and dust, burning with desire, exploding in volcanoes under earthly malediction. I remember that mountains are women. In this unending universe, Tamalpais is a miraculous thing, the miracle of matter itself, something we can single out, the pyramid of our own identity. We are because it is stable and it is ever-changing. Our identity is the series of the mountain's becomings. Our peace is its stubborn existence. Thank you.